Hello and welcome to NLP Metaprograms episode 4, Internal State, the third of the Basic Metaprograms. And happy Valentine's Day to all of you out there, whether it's still daytime or whether it's the morning or whether it's the evening or perhaps it's even yesterday. Happy Valentine's Day. I did say in one of my posts that I would talk a little bit about how we can tie in metaprograms into our personal relationships, because a lot of the focus so far has been on how we can use them in business. And I would say, in general, the basic metaprograms are very business oriented. A number of the complex metaprograms are really business oriented only. And there are some later ones in the upcoming episodes which are more relationship oriented than business oriented. We haven't got there yet. We'll be coming up to them in the weeks to come. But I think in general, here's the thing with this. What we start to really understand with metaprograms is just how differently other people experience their world, experience the events that take place in it, and experience people differently. And I think, what a lot of people do unconsciously is that they just automatically assume that everybody has the same experiences as them. And what we really get from NLP in general and what we get from the metaprograms is that's just not the case. So quite often, understanding our partner, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend's metaprograms starts to give us some insight into how they experience things differently than us, how they'll respond to different situations and circumstances differently than we do ourselves. And we start to realize that they're not doing things deliberately to annoy us, which I think a lot of people in relationships do. They go, they're doing this and they're doing it to piss me off or whatever it is. And what we start to realize is, no, that's not the case. It's just because they have a different metaprogram profile. And as I say, we'll be tying some of these relationship ones in specifically in later episodes. But at the moment, we're on the basic metaprogram number 3, which is internal state. Now, again, just like external behavior, internal process, we've got a sliding scale from thinker to feeler. In general, again, from an NLP perspective, the thinker would tend to have a preference for the AD, auditory digital representational system. And they would, in general, be dissociated, whereas the feeler would tend to have more of a preference for the visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. Though a particular bearing would be the fact that they are associated rather than dissociated. And, in general, this metaprogram is not about their preferred representational system. It could be quite different. Their metaprogram could be different than their preferred representational system. Also, in general, we tend to have that the metaprograms are consistent across contexts. Though always to be on the safe side, I would elicit the metaprogram in the context that I wanted to use it in to be really sure. So what we're looking for here when we ask the question, again, Myers-Briggs type indicator would ask 25 different questions to get this particular one of the type indicators. We're going to ask 1, maybe 2. And there are 2 different styles of questioning for this one. The first one is this. We would ask them, okay, can you think of or tell me about a work situation that you found the most challenging, the most troubling, a one-time event? Equally, we could ask them a question, can you tell me what was the absolute happiest moment that you had in your work, in your job, in your career? Now, what we're looking for is we're now looking for what we see in the person's physiology. We'd need to know whether the person was normally or reverse organized. Again, generalization is that most normally organized people are right-handed. whereas some left-hand people are reverse organized, as in they have the eye patterns the other way around. Generalizations again. Generalizations for me is it happens more than 50% of the time, which makes the generalization useful. Most right-handed people who are normally organized will wear their watch on their left wrist because we tell the time. So somebody who's normally organized will look down to their left to tell the time. We don't feel the time. So those are some quick checks as far as that's concerned, because you do need to know to a certain extent whether the person is normally reverse organized. Now, the feeler, when you ask them about that troubling time or that happiest time in their work, in their career, in their business, what we're looking for is, do their eyes go into kinesthetic? Which for normally organized would mean the person looks down and to their right. If they look down and to their right for any period of time whatsoever, then they are more feeler. The amount of time that they spend in the kinesthetic eye accessing pattern is how far along the feeler scale they would be. What we're also looking for is them accessing kinesthetic in their physiology. So not only the eye accessing pattern, but also what we'd see is that their breathing would move maybe from high up in the chest down to here, to the tummy, and their breathing would slow down, as well as accessing the kinesthetic representational system. They're associated, which is a key thing with feeler. Somebody who's more thinker, what you'll see is they could go anywhere with eye accessing patterns, up into visual or auditory digital, but what you would see is you would never see them go into kinesthetic. That's an important thing. They would never have their eyes go down to their right if they're normally organized. Obviously, if they're reverse organized, then you need to reverse these things I'm saying. But also their breathing would stay high up in their body and would remain quicker. Equally, their voice would be created up in their throat, so it'd be faster and higher pitched, whereas somebody who's more feeler would be creating their voice from down here. It would be slower, it would be more distorted, and would be lower pitch. So that's one kind of question for this. The other question that you can ask to elicit the same metaprogram is this: when you're faced with a decision to make, do you use logic, rationality, and sense in your decision, or do you tend to rely upon your feelings, what's important to you, and your personal values that are involved in the decision? The thinker, logic, rationality, sense. The feeler, more values, more the way that they feel about it. Also bringing in how their decisions might impact the feelings of others would be more feeler as well. And again, we've always got that opportunity or possibility that somebody's balanced. Like with the other two, if they go, well, it depends, sometimes I prefer logic, rationality, and sense, and sometimes the way that I feel about something, then we've got somebody who in Myers-Briggs would be taken as being X, which have the flexibility to move either side a little bit. And in the population, what we're talking about here is that 50% are more feeler and 50% are more thinker. Now, let's just work out or cover how this might change or alter somebody's behavior. The thinker, very logical, rational, sensible. They literally, because they're dissociated, they take a step back from the situation and look at it very objectively from a logic, rationality, sense point of view. They're also very objective about time. So there would be a relationship here with their timeline orientation is in their future and their past would be out in front of them, including the present being out in front of them, which is how they're dissociated. Some people who are more feeler might think that people who are more thinker are a little bit cold, maybe a little bit calculating. Though they will be very realistic, they might also tend to be more skeptical. And they are more interested in what actually has happened or what actually may happen compared to why it happened. Now, some of these more feeler are associated. So they're very much in touch with how they feel about things. They're very much into their personal values around the decision or the options that they're facing. Obviously, our values are the things which we feel most strongly about. So, these people are very much in touch with that. And they're also very much around how other people will feel about their decisions in this particular situation and other people's values, what's important to other people. The people who are more thinker will probably perceive somebody who's more feeler as being a little bit more out there, a little bit, significantly more subjective, and maybe a little bit soft and a little bit overly caring. How the feeler perceives time, because they tend to be in time, so their timeline orientation would tend to be front to back, then how they're feeling right now and how they've felt in the past are the most important. In fact, now is real, the past is real, but the future isn't real, because neither they or anyone that they know have ever experienced the future. So, in fact, they might even say that they would prefer to have lived in the past rather than in the future. So again, what we have is, remember, we've got a sliding scale there. We, as the NLP operator, let's say, although this is something we teach in a lot more detail on our master practitioner training, are really become the judge as to where the person is on that sliding scale, which then gives us an idea as to, let's put it into business again. Let's say that we're going to sell to someone who was more thinker, then we're going to talk logic, rationality, sense. How does this decision make sense to them? Somebody who's more feeler, then we're going to more tie into their values, what's important to them. We could do the rapid value elicitation, which I've done in previous live videos, asking what's important to you about and why is that important. Also with these people, how they felt about similar decisions in the past. And also what we can, also with somebody who's more feeler, then they will respond well to stories and metaphors, whereas these people will respond more to facts, figures, theories. They learn best by lecture. These people learn best by story. So again, what we've got here is, as the NLP professional, let's say, what we are looking for is to be able to elicit the metaprogram profile of the person we want to influence, then become very flexible in our own behavior, almost chameleon-like, so that we fine-tune our behavior, our communication, to fit that of the other person. For me, that is an indication of the ultimate respect for the other person, as in I'm going, okay, literally what I'm discovering is, how does this person communicate with themselves? That is always going to be the most effective way of communicating with them, is communicate with them in the same way they communicate with themselves. So this requires us to elicit first, so that we can pace where the person is. That's where the rapport comes in. That's where the ultimate level of respect comes in, before we then lead them to where it is that we want to go, to create the win-win scenarios that's going to enable both ourselves and the other person to get their win, their goal. So that's useful. We'll see you next week for our next NLP Metaprogram. Obviously, it will be episode 5. And it's a very important metaprogram actually. Next week, the adaptation response really makes a big difference to a whole series of things, both from a business and a relationship point of view. So make sure that you tune in for that one, that you get the reminder for that one, because adaptation response is big, really, really big. So I'm looking forward to seeing you then, and looking forward to sharing with you and teaching some more stuff about the NLP Metaprograms. See you for now.